We are recording.
Sorry if you heard my phone go off. Okie dokie. Well, welcome to this month's capsule, everyone. We got a lot of feedback when we've sent out surveys, students wanting to hear about how to separate their chapter from SOTA. So that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. And then as you guys are kind of filtering in chat while we're waiting for a couple of people to see if anyone else pops in, if you guys want to drop your school's name and your chapter's motto in the chat at all, you guys are more than welcome to do that. So the overall agenda for this evening is to go over introductions. It is me and someone else speaking tonight. Go over some quick general updates about COTAD and what's happening for chapters right now. Then the meat and potatoes of the event, separating from SOTA, how to go about it, what to think about when you're starting your chapter, starting to consider that. Some quick announcements. Then we'll go into regional breakout rooms, let you guys meet up and chat for a little bit, have a group discussion, large group discussion back in the main session, and then quickly talk about goodbyes and actionables. So I'm Jack, if we have not met. Like I said earlier, I am the interim capsule coordinator. I graduated from the University of Indianapolis about a year ago. And my job is in assistive technology.
Yeah, and so my name's Ichendu Iwanyawu. I'm an third year student at Pacific University. I had the pleasure of doing my capstone with COTAD National and specifically with the COTAD Chapters program. So shout outs to Dr. Emma Baldwin for accepting me as her site mentor. And yeah, so I'm here just to help out with this capsule because it goes really relevant with my capstone this year.
Okay, and then we're gonna have some quick announcements, and we're gonna have some quick updates, and then we'll go into some quick announcements and other statements. COTAD has put out some statements. Hopefully you guys have seen that, like the national group of COTAD has put out some statements on some controversial things that have come up. I'm sure there are going to be some other announcements that come down the pike soon. With other things that are happening in the political world. The Chapter Innovation Challenge is up and coming. So that's new. There will be more details divulged about that coming soon. There are also upcoming COTAD national events to be on the lookout for. They're not formally announced, but they will be coming down the pike really quickly. Emma looks like she has something to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's so many unannounced things, but we want you to know that they're on the horizon while you're here. So the Innovation Challenge will be coming out on social media at the end of this month, and it's going to be really, really fantastic. So watch the chapters and the COTAD social media. Really enticing challenge, and I hope that you all participate. And the COTAD National is going to hold some events for members and students. Actually, it might be open to everyone. And so, yeah, keep an eye on the social media for those as well when they get announced.
And then we have Yushendu's COTAD Chapters Experience Survey that he'll talk about a little bit during this presentation. And then we have a chapter community meetup June 3rd in Rhode Island. Lindsay, the old capsule coordinator, is hosting that, which is awesome. And then we have an upcoming mandatory all call on June 21st.
All right, y'all, here's my little piece. So we wanted to just share the COTAD statement regarding the AOTA Inspire events and feelings that revolved around it. More than just a singular event, it's a whole thing that we wanted to call attention to. COTAD's statement is that we don't make statements because our action is our statement, our mission is our statement. So if you want to see our statement on statements, I know it sounds ridiculous, but we do have a statement on statements and it's on the website. There's a whole tab up top actually that says statements. And so it has our whole list of statements. I just wanted to put this one here so that you have it. And some of the events coming down the pipe and things that are working on coming into fruition are also in response to this. But we try to be actionable in doing the work before anything comes around rather than just being responding to things that happen. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about that, but I'll put a little link in the chat about our that'll take you to our statements page in case you want to go to that or have any questions about that.
And then this is just a little blurb to talk about later. We're going to share about your chapter separating from SOTA. If anyone has any like lived experience and has a chapter that has already separated from SOTA, and that'll be open kind of during the group discussion phase of this. But if you feel like you have something super pertinent to say, go ahead, pop it in the chat. And then if Emma will bring my attention to it, or I will try to keep an eye on it. If it adds to the conversation, it's more than welcome. Okay, so why would your chapter separate from SOTA to begin with? You might want to separate your chapter from SOTA because it becomes a separate RSO. And if you don't know, every university is a little bit different, but as a separate RSO, most universities give supplemental funding, so additional financial resources. But with that additional funding comes some like stipulations, usually with each university, which can make things a little bit more challenging. So those are kind of things to think about and start balancing. And we'll dive into that a little bit more in the rest of the capsule. So it allows for financial separation of the organizations. So if your chapter is feeling limited by SOTA and what it can do, it allows for some separate financial independence, which might allow for more opportunities for the chapter. And then independent events. I don't know, each chapter is different, but you might have a better schedule to work with your students on having more events than what kind of falls within the range of SOTA and having to work together. And we'll also talk about in this capsule working with SOTA if you do decide to separate chapters, because it's important that you guys have like a professional relationship, kind of keep those ties and make sure that you guys support each other and don't bring each other down and say that students should be in one or the other. And then typically if you separate your chapter, you're going to have a larger COTAD committee because there's more pieces to be filled and roles to be filled within that. A disclaimer, do not feel pressured to separate your chapter from SOTA because of this event. And some things to think about is there a need within your community or chapter for separation of the student organizations, or is it something that would be better served by like a partnership of those two organizations? Or does your university still work well with being under SOTA or with SOTA? Within the bounds of SOTA. And is your chapter really ready to take on this responsibility? Something that Yushendu and I have talked about is that each chapter and our experience has changed so much from year to year on student participation because the turnover is so quick from students transitioning throughout their program relatively quickly. So what are some of the benefits of separating your RSO? You might have more freedom with events. You might have more financial resources, and it might encourage increased participations in your students. And then what you might provide is more events, resources, and like community to your students. So the first thing to think about, I don't know if you guys get along in the place in your schooling where you guys have talked about needs assessments, but needs assessments are really important, and it's important to do within your COTAD chapter, is to see really like who's coming to COTAD events, how big is the population that you're serving, who's interested and who's involved, how many of the students are within your cohort or other cohorts. What that participation might look like if it's no longer tied to SOTA. Is your chapter operating with a meeting on the back end of a SOTA meeting? And so is that participation going to be the same as if it's a separate day? How many events are occurring within your calendar year already? Would this stay the same, or would this change with it being separated from SOTA? And the other thing to think about is, in separating, you're going to have to devote a decent amount of resources to separating your student organizations. And with that, your energy is going to be put into the action of separating, not as much as building events. And with that said, are you going to be able to maintain the constant steady events that you guys might have been holding, or is that going to change and fluctuate, and how will that affect student participation? And what are your general motivating factors for separating SOTA from SOTA? What are you hoping to bring to your students by being a separate student-based organization?
Yeah, and another thing I think it's important to keep in mind is the environment or the student engagement around your specific university. Are the students around you, do they go to these events? Are they more passionate about this DEI work within OT, or are they, or is it more of a, maybe a predominantly white institution where it's, it's all very hush hush, and, there's not much, emphasis on DEI work. So people won't really be participating in any sort of separation of any kind. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is like the amount of enthusiasm that even students have, depending on the university.
So if you do decide to go down the path of separating your chapter from SOTA, there are some things to think about within the relationship that those two organizations will then have. Will your chapter chairs still be members of the SOTA board? Is that a position that they're willing to keep on that SOTA exec board if your chapter chooses to separate? And then what are their duties on the board now? Have they changed? Are they expected to go to every single SOTA-based or meeting, and are they still to be as involved? Do their positions change at all? How can you time events so that there's increased participation to both SOTA and COTAD, so that you guys aren't clashing events or they're not too soon together? Are events intentionally scheduled during less stressful times for students, or intentionally scheduled to be a break for students? So are you promoting students kind of looking at the cohort's calendar and what really is a stressful time period, and trying to plan both of your meetings around that to promote the highest level of student engagement? Or can your events be timed around prominent historical months or other things that are happening on the calendar year? But really ensuring that your calendar days don't overlap, or they overlap intentionally in a way that promotes engagement with students. And then making sure to exchange information both ways communally, making sure to keep that an open dialogue, promote each other. Don't try to be like ours. If you participate in ours, you don't have to participate in SOTA. But having it also be a separate student organization might be able to establish the fact that you guys might have separate dues if you don't already have dues for your COTAD chapter and membership, which is another way to gain financial benefit. So something to talk about is we all have goals. We set up goals every year with our chairs. And hopefully, if this looking into separation is an idea that you guys are wanting to do, it's encouraged that you make separating like your chapter its own separate goal for the year or for the following years. And that it's given kind of its own legroom because it really is an undertaking. And then because it's an undertaking, because potentially you're making it an RSO, that's more of the portion that I consider to be like the huge undertaking. Really registering and creating a student-based organization, even if you have a lot of buy-in with the university, can take a lot of legwork. I did take some time and go back through our old, my alma mater's old student handbook and how to make an RSO. And there's just a lot of legwork that needs to go into it as far as what's needed, the number of like participation. Usually there's semesterly or yearly events that like a treasurer and the co-chairs would have to go to in order to be a registered student organization and maintain that. But at baseline, our university was willing to give up $500 up front to a registered student organization, which encourages funding and could promote more student engagement. And then additional supplemental funding if you are able to stay up on that. And then you also, the purpose of potentially then having a treasurer and making a bigger committee is that you would need someone to really separate out those roles, because it could be too much for one person to take on. I'm not going to say that it's impossible. I'm just saying that you guys are students and I don't want anyone to really feel like they have to manage the world. So it's okay to ask for help and to get more people involved with the intention of giving them specific roles and designations in order to promote engagement across your organization and the chapter. And so just RSOs at baseline take a lot of time and a lot of resources. I'm very sorry for the background noise. My puppy has decided that she's in a playful mood. She should quiet down in 2 seconds. And then developing new standards of engagement between COTAD and SOTA, if separating, can be new territory. And depending on your board's feelings about the chapter separating, it will have to be a very nuanced discussion with a lot of communication. Yeah, and so going back to that, each university has its own policies, responsibilities, and requirements of RSOs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, speaking of bylaws, depending on your COTAD chapter, if you establish some level of bylaws, maybe you can use that template to create your RSO to give that your chapter more teeth, and make sure you're adhering to those policies and procedures that your university has in order to create an RSO. So there's actually a template on COTAD's in the COTAD resource. I can share it to you right now. And it actually is kind of like a bylaw template, and it would be really helpful in case you want to create bylaws for yourself.
Yeah, but going back to that, I really touched on this slide pretty heavily previously, but each university has their own policies and handbooks as to how RSOs are to be conducted, what they can and cannot do. For example, the university that I was at, in their list of policies, student organizations could only have one event per month. And so you get into some touchy territory, and it depends on how regulated RSOs are at your university and how promoted and encouraged they are by your university. But if you are an RSO, you can get that supplemental funding. But the university, if you are charging dues, typically has, like our previous university had not a cap on dues, but it had an expectation that dues are not considered unreasonable to the student's financial situation. So if you're having dues for your own student participation in order to incur more funding for that year, you have to then abide by the RSO's handbook as well. And then same thing, does the university have buy-in and expectation for extra funding from the student organization to go back into the university at the end of the year, or does it roll over? So there's just some complications when you get into doing RSOs, but it can be really, really valuable because you can get that additional funding and you get this promotion and support of your university. They may advertise things more, so you may get more undergrads participating in SOTA and COTAD events. So it kind of goes hand in hand, as well as they will give you like campus spaces and resources to perform events with. With that said, like there's caveats, like in our policy handbook, when I was reading it, you couldn't get outside catering. It had to be catered by like the campus facility, unless you had an event off campus. So just some tricky, nuanced stuff. And I really encourage you to look into if your school has a public RSO handbook, just readily accessible, that you can briefly look through as you're starting to think about and like anticipate planning, separating your chapter out. And then who's like, it looks back at the responsibility of who's required to go to those required meetings by the university, who's going to be your main point of contact to the RSO office on your campus. And then one last thing I will say about RSOs is there is specifically funding in RSOs or some universities for DEI and JEDI work at universities. They have specifically like allocated funds for works of that nature. So can your student-run organization get even more support financially if you are considered an RSO? Are you more eligible for those funding sources from the university? So with that said, you might need more support, like I've mentioned, and you may already have a committee. If you don't, committees are awesome. I mentioned them previously in our last capsule as a way to kind of disperse work that the chapters might be incurring, so that the chapter chairs don't have to do not as much, but they are doing equally as much work, but just a little bit offloading and giving other people the opportunity to get more involved in the work, as far as taking part in creating resources and or parts of presentations or chapter events. So if you don't have a committee, committees are awesome. They can feed into like self-care because you're able to offload some of that work and give yourself a little bit more of a break, and set up equal relationships that kind of benefit your community. But as you're looking at building a community, you need to look at the roles that might intentionally need to be on the committee moving forward if you do decide to separate. So what roles does the RSO expect a student organization to have? So does it need to have a treasurer? Does it need to have a secretary? And are those roles delineated out by the university, or is that something that you guys get to create on your own? And so then how to structure committee meetings, like having an agenda either semesterly or yearly of actionable goals that you want to accomplish. And then I know you tend to just talked on the bylaws section that we have and the resource that he linked to already. Emma, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to read Alejandra's comment. She said that some universities have RSOs also register under the DEI office, so then you receive additional funding or support, and that way you can connect with your DEI office or your coordinators if that's available at your school. So that's another route to look for. I don't think our school did that, but that's a really cool way to make sure that you get extra support and also guidance in your leadership.
Yep. So if you do decide to build a committee, the expectations of your committee members, how much time you're expecting them to commit, the frequency of the meetings that you're planning on having, and just generally the time commitment of each role that you're kind of anticipating. That way people have a clear understanding of what they're signing up for when they get involved. And then just touching back on, it's important to have your yearly and semesterly goals for your chapter. That way everyone's kind of on the same page within that committee if you're structuring in a committee-based format.
All right, so calling all COTAD chapters. We have me and Emma created a COTAD chapter experience survey, and what this is going to be about is the personal experience of what you had to do as a COTAD chapter. So it's going to deep dive into how it's been transitioning in, if you're prepared to transition out, how you're feeling comfortably expressing yourself in this DEI work, and also are you getting the level of support that you're getting. So it's about 15 to 20 minutes long. There's a checkbox near the end if you want to have a one-on-one follow-up meeting via Zoom with me, so we can go more in depth into some of your answers on the survey. This will be going out to all 132 COTAD chapters, so answer whenever you can. I think it'll be open for, I'm gonna say, about 2 or 3 weeks. So just start it now so I can get some info and I can start compiling this together. And ultimately, this is going to be your answers are going to be helpful in creating a bit of a starter kit or a handbook that I want to create for those COTAD chapters that may not have as much idea of what to do with their chapters. And so giving you guys giving us those answers, it gets me a better idea of what to expect. Like, hey, you guys, if you're lost, if you need something, okay, well, maybe start here, and this is how you can make your COTAD chapter a little bit more versatile and all that. So anyways, there's a link right there to start the survey. It should work. And also, just if you have any questions, my email is going to be in the chat. You can email me later, and I'll also be sending out an email with all the chapters in it. And you can always reach out to me anytime.
So the next thing that I have scheduled is just to give you guys kind of an opportunity to separate out into some breakout rooms. We typically do these by region, but since there's only 21 of you, we might just do 10 and 10 to allow you guys kind of an opportunity to mingle and chat and talk about kind of what you're thinking. If you're thinking about separating still, if this has been overwhelming and I've really discouraged you from it, I hope I did not. It can be really beneficial and really fruitful for your chapter to continue to grow and gain some traction across your university and for students in undergrad. COTAD wasn't a thing when I was an undergrad. I might have gotten involved sooner. But the topics that you guys might want to discuss, these are just ideas, are if your chapter has already separated, what worked, what didn't when you were separating, what part of separation took the longest, sharing your advice for chapters separating from COTAD, communication, tips, event ideas, and timelines. And then you can talk about when is it a good time to separate and when is it not a good time to separate. And kind of where you are at in your own chapter's journey. And then what would an independent COTAD chapter look like for you? Emma, can you help me separate people out into breakout rooms?
Yeah, before we separate, Alejandra, are you still on here? And do you want to mention your or additional other thing coming up that I failed to mention?
Hi, everybody. I'm Alejandra. I'm the partner in crime to Emma, so I'm the co-chair for the committee. Yes, so we had, like Emma and Jack sort of mentioning in response to events that happened at AOTA and just trends that we're noticing on a national level, we are going to be hosting a fireside chat. So going beyond just having a listening session, we're going to be doing a conversation and open discussion with chapters and our national BOD, national leaders as well, on what are we missing when it comes to, empowering students to be better and more powerful JEDI leaders or DEI leaders, both in your communities and in the field. We want to make sure that we're meeting your needs. We are giving you the education tools. We're giving you, is it the education? Is it the conversation pieces? What is it that's missing? So we're wanting to kind of fill in the gaps when it comes to that, just because a lot of the individuals that are on the national leadership, we were students a while ago. So, it looks different. Being a Jedi leader as a current student looks very different than it did just 5 years ago when we were students. So we want to make sure we're meeting your needs, addressing any concerns that you all have, just having an open discussion, for anyone who was at the AOTA conference or was impacted by events that happened. So, we'll be sending out an email on Friday, but we're anticipating for the event to be May 31st. So 2 weeks from now. Quick notice, apologies, but it was when we could get everybody together. So it'll be May 31st, same time as capsules or, monthly COTAD events. So I believe 5 p.m. PST, 7 p.m. CST. Miracle if I got that right. Okay. So yeah, then that's when the event will be, May 31st. We are closing it off just to chapter leaders, just to make sure that we're able to have discussions with everybody. Or, if your chapter leader is not able to attend and you want to send a representative, that's fine. We just want to make sure we give an opportunity to everybody to speak. So email, big emails going out on Friday. Apologies in advance. Please read through the whole thing because there's a ton, but all that information will be included in that email. That's all.
Yeah. Emma and I have been talking a little bit in the chat, and we kind of wanted to know where you guys are all at as far as thinking about separating your chapters. Can you guys like potentially put up like emojis if you are like already separated from SOTA?
Or chat or pop on or whatnot.
Yeah.
I could do a poll or we all could just talk. That feels really challenging and there's not that many of us. I love that idea. That is very smart.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we had 2. Okay, there's more than 2 separated. Awesome.
Olivia, are you all separated? Is that what the thumbs up was for? Okay.
So how many of you are thinking about separating or changing the way that you're structured or becoming an RSO or things like that? Okay, so I feel like we're kind of split.
Yeah.
Separate once a new cohort comes, totally.
Awesome.
Okay, well, let's do it this way. Let's do 2 breakout rooms. Let's do one if you're like fully separate already and you're working on structuring or whatnot. And then let's do one where you're thinking about it and debating and coming up with this idea. And then you'll talk in those and then let's confer as a group at the end. And that way, those of you who have already gone through this process can help inform those of you who are still thinking about it. What do you think, Jack? Does that sound good?
Yep, I think that sounds good.
So I'm going to let you choose the rooms. Room 1 will be already separate. Room 2 will be working on it, restructuring, that kind of thing.
And then I know I will stay just kind of in the large group meeting. So if you guys need to pop in and out over here to talk to us, talk to me, we'll be here.
And Jack, do you want any of us to go join the breakout rooms or do you want us to stay here with you?
Up to you. You want to go to the breakout rooms? That's totally fine.
Of course, I typed it wrong in the chat. I just did a room.
It's okay. I actually renamed them.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
I think we might, some of us might join the restructuring one just to add to people and to give some context.
Yeah. Okay. That's totally fine. Yeah. Did it go well? Did it go well? Went okay. I see some. Which room was that from? Yeah, Olivia, did you have something to say?
They're
No,
saying
I
room
was just
one.
saying we were in room 1. Sorry.
Oh, room one. Was room one the separated one? Okay. Cool. Awesome.
All right, y'all. Tell us what you found out. Was this helpful? Do you want to share some success stories, or do the people who are thinking about separating want to ask for advice? What was the general like conversations about in your rooms?
Well, at least for room 2, the room that has not separated, they made pretty. My place has not separated yet because it's a very new chapter. I think
Okay.
it's in its second year. They made some pretty convincing arguments, points about separating. One of the fact that like you don't have to always get approved by SOTA because SOTA funds everything, and they have a very strict or stringent way that these events can be held. So if you're independent, you can be more autonomous. You can be doing whatever events you want to. It doesn't even necessarily have to relate to OT. It can relate to healthcare. So you got more leeway with stuff. So good stuff.
True. True.
I know that for the separated room, there were 2 things that I heard. One is that some of us didn't know that you could already be a part of SOTA. Some of us already started off separated from SOTA.
Okay.
And then another thing was that we also noticed that participation isn't always as consistent with some COTAD chapters in comparison to SOTA. We kind of feel that participation dwindles over time, whereas for SOTA, it's almost just like everyone's already a part of SOTA. It's kind of just expected for them to be there, whereas COTAD's kind of like that other option.
Yeah. Does your university for SOTA have like mandatory participation in order to remain a member?
They have service hours. There's like a minimum of service hours that they have to get. Whereas meetings, it's not, I haven't heard anything about the minimum amount of meetings that everyone has to go to, but I don't think they've ever had an issue with people not showing up to the meetings.
Okay. Does the participation dwindle? Are you talking about specifically your university?
Yes. Yeah, I spoke about my university, but others in that breakout room had also talked about their experiences as well. So that was just one thing.
Does it dwindle depending on time of the semester?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
For us, for ECU, we're a fairly new chapter. So officially we became a chapter in the spring, even though we had kind of already started it in the fall semester. So we're still fairly new. But that, I guess, like maybe someone who's been a chapter for longer can maybe talk about their experiences overall.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say it might be that like different events depending on the event might pull more attention than other events. And then as well as the participation across the semester versus like timing with hard exams or coursework might affect attendance in events, or some things that like we especially saw when I was a chair.
Y'all, I'm gonna do my like really, really minor plug right here that if you are making an amazing impact on a few people, that is way better than having one event that you have everyone attend because they're required to attend. This is like, it is so hard to remember that because all you want to do is spread this word and this information and how important this stuff is to everyone, and not everyone wants to listen. And so if you're making an impact on some people who want to listen, it can have the ripple effect and hopefully impact a lot more people. So I know we always want to look at participation in numbers, but make sure you remember like how well your things are received, and you're having a little bit of grace because OT students are notoriously immensely busy and overcommitted and likely, probably think they have better things on their plate. And to you, it might not be a better thing, but if you're making an impact on some, it's way better than having people there distracted or not fully invested.
Here. I actually want to add to that anecdotally. My Pacific University chapter we were the founding members when we first started 3 years ago. And when we started doing our events, and it's a small number of people, but every single one of the people who came there, especially the people of color, were like, we were in this very, very white area of Oregon, and they were like, I feel like I have like people I can talk to. Like I have a crew now, like people who I can actually talk to and stuff like that. So yeah, going back to what Emma was saying, like, yeah, the impact you can have is more important than, the numbers in the numbers game.
Yeah. Quick plug, I went ahead and put our Airtable link, the survey we do post capsule, in the chat. So if you guys have time and wouldn't mind doing that, it gives us feedback so that we can improve capsules and just the committee over time, and how we can serve you guys. Any other big takeaways? Any other thoughts? Doesn't have to be about
questions.
I did have a response to that as well, just really quick. I think that seems to be a common issue as we talk about, like, I endearingly call it like generations of our chapters are growing. A lot of you probably aren't the founders of your chapter, or, your third, fourth, fifth generation of the chapter leaders, but it's a common issue that we're seeing kind of all across the country as well. So I think there's a couple things to consider, right? Is that we're all coming back from COVID, a pandemic. A lot of people are burnt out, regardless of if it's DEI workshops or events or not. So yeah, like Emma said, give yourself some grace. But also, there's been some ideas that other chapters have thrown around, like doing make it fun, have like a bring 3 friends to this event, or, whoever brings the most friends or classmates gets a $5 Starbucks gift card, make it fun, make it light. Also, if you have the investment from your department and from your professors, you'll most likely see a better outcome as well with your events. At least at my school, and I was the SOTA president and the COTAD chapter leader, right? So I got to see both sides of how I was treated in my different roles, in my different positions. And every SOTA event, professors were there, they were talking about it. People were, SOTA leadership was talking about it and during class, the way it was so embedded in the culture as a department. Whereas COTAD was, one, we were new, but we weren't as embedded or as supported even on a department level. And that was addressed. We had a meeting about it with our department chair and had concerns about, why aren't we talking about it during class? Why aren't we talking about student orientation? That's another idea. Are you speaking at student orientation? Do you have a presence during student interviews? Like, do people know about you the moment they learn about SOTA? Do they also learn about COTAD? Because it's equally, if not more important, your presence on campus. So you should make that known to your department, have that, have that knowledge that you are just as important, again, if not more important. So make your presence known and make sure that the department is equally representing you on campus as well, so that people know about your events and they know the importance of it. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
I agree. That was very helpful, just to especially this is our maybe 6th month as a new chapter on campus. And I think we kind of have this advantage of we started separate, and SOTA has been very collaborative with us, and we get to be at the meeting for the intros into our new cohort coming up this summer. And just, I think where my worries are is the maintenance of that. And since in our second year, majority of our field work is off site. So maybe 50% of our participants won't be on campus anymore. And kind of engaging that new audience to come in seems very important from the get-go. With that, I kind of have a question of like, how's your guys' social media engagement from COTAD to SOTA? Because we'll put a lot of like infographics and slideshows on Instagram, and from just my viewing, I can see the engagement to be a lot less. Like when SOTA has an event, everything gets reposted. But when we post something for COTAD for, let's say, a holiday or a cultural awareness week or month, that won't really be as shared as much. And I just don't know if that's just the culture of the cohort. But knowing that there's so much hard work being put into those slideshows, and we're trying to have different platforms of information so that you don't have to be available to go to a meeting. Just kind of like with that, I think we're doing what we can on our side. But I do see a stark difference between like social media engagement on SOTA versus COTAD.
I don't mean to be a pessimist, but I will say I feel like SOTA, it's trendy, it's cool, right? Everybody knows about SOTA. It's, you know what it is from the get-go, right? It's easy to recognize. Whereas COTAD, regardless of what we're doing, it could be the most normal thing out there to us, but it might seem controversial, or oh, other people aren't talking about it, or it's not as popular. So using just like basic marketing techniques can really help as well, like tag 5 of your friends, just little cheesy things to try to encourage people, but then also asking, like, does your SOTA repost what COTAD posts? Does you like your SOTA chapter?
Madison, can you recall? I don't
think our SOTA does. We have like a cohort Instagram, and so they have been helpful in reposting some things. But I do not believe SOTA has, no.
You can ask them too. Same way that your department should be better supporting your chapter. Same thing with your SOTA. You're all students. You're all going to be treating diverse individuals. There's no reason why they shouldn't be posting it. You get, you're riled up. It's fine.
Good idea.
Like,
Permission.
No, that is
you can
a
even
good
offer
idea.
like, we'll promote your SOTA stuff if you promote like the COTAD stuff. That way it like feels more like don't like just do this for us, but like it feels like a mutually beneficial engagement.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a good idea. That's definitely something that seems very attainable too. Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, it's 8 o'clock. I don't mean to keep you. If you guys need to stick around and ask us anything else, we're here. We'll stay on for a couple more minutes.
And you can
Thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. Remember the all call June 21st. We'll all be there.
Hopefully we'll see you at all these things coming up before then too.
You can always email us if you have questions, specific concerns with your university, things that you would like us to help you address as a committee. We got you.
Thank you.